Have you ever heard that the calmest person in the room might actually be the most dangerous one? I know, that sounds strange at first, because we were taught the opposite, right? The person who never loses their cool, who doesn't flinch, who stays steady no matter what, that's the mature one, the strong one, the one who has it all figured out. But today, I want to challenge that idea, because here's the thing. Where that calm comes from changes everything. Depending on its source, calm can be the force that saves people, or it can be a slow, quiet poison. And most of us can't tell the difference just by looking. Here's what makes this so tricky. A genuinely calm person and a person pretending to be calm look identical from the outside. Both smile. Both seem unshakable. Both say, "I'm fine," when you ask. But on the inside, completely different worlds. One is a lighthouse standing firm in the middle of a storm. The other is someone who locked the door because the storm terrified them. And the painful truth is, the second one is far more common. Let me use two characters to show you exactly what I mean. If you've ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, you know Uncle Iroh. And there's something about that, man, that just makes you feel at ease, isn't there? He's in the middle of a war, and he stops to brew tea. He's about to witness an Agni Kai, and he cracks a gentle joke to his nephew. When you watch Iroh, you get the sense that this is a man who has been through it all. Loss, regret, grief, shame. And because he went through all of it and didn't look away, there's nothing left that can shake him. That is real calm. Now compare that to Doflamingo from One Piece. The man is perfectly composed on the surface. He's always smiling, always in control, cool as glass. But look at his eyes. There's something simmering in there, something boiling just beneath that polished surface. His calm isn't mastery, it's suppression. It's the lid on a pot of something furious and unresolved. And when that lid finally blows, everyone nearby gets caught in it. Now, most people in real life aren't trying to be Doflamingo. They're not villains. They just learned, somewhere along the way, that shutting down was the only way to survive. Think about when you were a kid. What happened when you showed emotions at home? For some of us, feelings were welcomed. They were normal. You could cry, you could get angry, and the world didn't end. But for a lot of us, showing emotion had consequences. Maybe when you got angry, the whole room went cold. Or it triggered something even worse. Maybe when you said you were sad, someone told you to toughen up. Maybe when you said you were scared, you got, "Why are you making such a big deal out of nothing?" And so a child learns something fast. Showing emotion is dangerous. Staying quiet is safe. Going numb is how you survive. That is exactly how false calm is born. And here's the thing. In the beginning, it works. As a survival strategy for a kid living in an unpredictable home, it's actually brilliant. It protects you. The problem is, that same kid grows into an adult and carries the strategy with them. The environment changes, but the brain keeps running the old program. Emotion comes up, crush it. Anger rising, act like nothing's wrong. Feeling sad? Say you're fine. That program is still running right now in this moment for a lot of people. And from the outside, it looks impressive. People will tell you, "Wow, I can't believe how calm you are. I could never handle that." But here's the dark side of that compliment. Every time someone praises you for it, you sink a little deeper in, because now the calm has become your identity. You can't crack. You can't break. People are watching. And so you stop checking in with yourself at all. You stop even looking at what's going on inside. Now let's talk about what that actually costs you. Because three things tend to happen, and they usually hit at the same time. The first one is the explosion, not a predictable one. Not during the big moments. It happens out of nowhere, on a random Tuesday, over something tiny. The ATM eats your card. Someone is 5 minutes late. The Wi-Fi goes out. And suddenly, there's this wave of emotion that you don't recognize, that you can't explain, that feels completely out of proportion to the moment. Think about Gaara from Naruto. He spent years cutting himself off from his feelings, from connection, from his own pain. But there's a tipping point, and when he hit it, the sand just came pouring out. Uncontrollable, overwhelming, and even he couldn't stop it because it had been buried for too long. That's not just a story. It's a pattern many people know intimately. The second thing is numbness. When you practice pushing down the bad feelings for long enough, something strange happens. The good ones stop showing up too. You get good news and feel nothing. A song you used to love comes on and it's just noise. You meet up with a friend you haven't seen in months and you're there, but you're not really there. It feels like there's a glass wall between you and your own life, like you're not living it, you're watching it. People who've lived in this state for a long time often describe it the same way. I'm not sad exactly. I just feel empty. I don't want to do anything. I just feel nothing. That is a significant signal from your inner world. And what makes it scary is this. When you're that numb, you don't even know why you're struggling. There's nothing to point to. It just feels hollow. The third thing is disconnection from the people around you. This is the most painful part, and honestly, the most ironic. When someone has spent years sealing off their own emotional world, they may struggle to stay present with someone else's emotions. It's not that they don't care. It's that they don't know what to do when feelings show up in the room. So when a friend breaks down and opens up about something hard, this person immediately goes into problem-solving mode. Here's what happened. Here's what you should do. Here's the logical next step. But that's not what the friend needed. They needed someone to just sit with them, to say, I hear you. I'm here. That's it. That was the whole ask. It can become harder to respond with emotional presence instead of immediate problem solving, not because they're cold, not because they don't care, but because the emotional circuitry has been switched off for so long, they genuinely don't know how to show up in that way. So the people around them start to pull back. And this person thinks, I worked so hard to help. Why is everyone still distant? Nobody's the bad guy. But the pattern keeps repeating, and the loneliness grows quietly. So what does real calm actually look like? If false calm is about eliminating emotion, real calm is about seeing it. False calm acts like nothing's wrong when everything is. Real calm notices the feeling, names it, and then chooses how to respond. That difference is everything. One approach erases the emotion to avoid being controlled by it. The other recognizes the emotion so that it loses its power to control you. Iroh wasn't a man without feeling. He lost his son. He carried the weight of a war he once took part in. He felt grief, regret, and shame. And because he faced those feelings instead of running from them, they deepened him rather than owning him. He knew how to sit with pain the way you sit with a quiet cup of tea. Hold it. Feel the warmth. And then let it go. That is not something you're born with. It's something you build. The Stoics understood this too. And I want to be clear, they were not about suppressing emotion. The Stoics often returned to a simple distinction: what is up to us and what is not. Marcus Aurelius, in the personal reflections we now call meditations, kept returning to what was within his power, his judgments, his actions, his character. In those reflections, he was honest about everything: the frustration, the exhaustion, the loneliness. But every time a difficult feeling arose, he tried to focus on what he could actually influence and let go of what he couldn't. That's it. That's the whole practice. Simple, right? But it takes years to actually live it. Because our brains are wired to react to threats automatically. The reaction fires before you can think. The real training is learning to create a tiny gap between the trigger and the response. That pause is where everything changes. So let's say you're starting to recognize yourself in some of this. What now? First, I want to say something important. You didn't become this way because something is wrong with you. Your brain built this strategy to keep you safe. It was the best tool available at the time. And because of it, you made it through situations that would have broken a lot of people. So don't turn this into another reason to be hard on yourself. This is just about learning a new strategy alongside the old one. Start by observing your emotions instead of trying to fix or eliminate them. Next time something uncomfortable comes up, instead of pushing it down, just pause. Get curious. What is this? Where is it coming from? Where do I feel it in my body? Is there tightness in my chest? A lump in my throat? A heaviness in my stomach? You don't have to name it perfectly. You don't have to understand it completely. Just acknowledge that it's there. Because here's what a lot of people discover. Emotions often get louder when they're ignored. And for many people, simply noticing and naming what you feel can reduce its grip. Not always, but often, awareness helps more than avoidance. This might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you haven't done it in a long time. But that discomfort, that's an emotion too. Just look at that one too. The next step is finding small ways to let things out. This doesn't have to mean talking to someone right away. I write. I just open a notebook and let it spill out. What bothered me today? What I'm not saying out loud. It doesn't have to be well written. It doesn't even have to make sense. Just a few words. Frustrated, confused, I don't know. That's enough. Or put on a song that hits somewhere deep and just sit with it. If something comes up, let it come. If not, that's okay too. You're just cracking the valve open a little, letting small amounts of pressure out before it builds to something unmanageable. And find one person, just one, someone who will actually listen. But here's the key. You don't have to open up completely right away. Start with something small. Hey, today was kind of rough. That's it. That's the whole sentence. And then watch what happens. Does the world collapse? Does the relationship fall apart? Almost never. And every time you have that experience, your brain updates its files. Oh, this is safe. I can do this. That is the shift. That's the moment things start to change. And if you have the capacity for it, consider working with a professional, a therapist, a counselor, a coach. Not because something is broken in you, but because having a space where someone listens without judgment, without an agenda, without needing anything from you, that's genuinely rare. Think of it the way you'd think of going to a doctor. When your body has been running on empty for years, your mind deserves that same level of care. Here's what I want you to leave with. Calm only becomes a strength when it's a choice, not a reflex born out of fear, not a wall built out of survival. A choice. I feel this, and I'm deciding how I want to move through it. That is the whole difference between real calm and the kind that quietly eats you from the inside. It's not about having no feelings. It's about not being dragged around by them. Zorro from One Piece doesn't stand unshakable in front of an impossible opponent because he's empty inside. He stands that way because he has faced defeat after defeat after defeat. And he chose to go through every single one instead of around it. That depth is where his steadiness comes from. And the same is true for you.
Every time you face a feeling, instead of running from it, your foundation gets a little stronger. Every uncomfortable moment you walk through, instead of suppress, you earn a little more of that real calm. That is the actual training. That is what it's made of. Your emotions are not your enemy. They are the voice of a part of you that has gone unheard for a very long time. And choosing to finally listen to that voice, that might be the most courageous thing you ever do.